the AI Ethics Lab at Rutgers University. Dr. Nathan Walker is a lecturer in First Amendment Law and Religious Studies, where he teaches AI ethics laws at Honors College and an Honors College faculty fellow. He serves as the founder and principal investigator at AI Ethics Lab, founding editor at the AI and Human Rights Index, and contributing researcher to the Munich Declaration of AI and Human Rights. Nathan is also a research fellow at Stellenbosch, did I say that right? University in South Africa, and an expert AI trainer for OpenAI's Human Data Team. He is a certified AI ethics officer and has held visiting researcher appointments at Harvard and Oxford. Nathan has authored 5 books on law, education, and religion, and has presented his research at the United Nations Human Rights Council, the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and the United States Senate. He earned his doctorate in First Amendment Law from Columbia University. It is my privilege to welcome my now friend, Nathan Walker.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You didn't mention that I have 3 learning disabilities and an imposter syndrome. Thank you for this invitation. It's a real honor to be in your presence. Today we're going to explore the concept of moral imagination and reflect on how to move from smart to wise AI. Before unpacking the meaning of those terms, I want to take a moment to reflect upon this season of uncertainty that we've entered. There are shifting global dynamics. There are rapidly evolving disruptive technologies, increased social polarization, changing public priorities, and strained resources. And yet one thing remains constant: the urgent need to help displaced communities. The field of resettlement services is navigating an incredible amount of ambiguity while also facing new technological innovations that bring both promise and peril. So what are service providers asking at this moment? Many of the same questions that the world community is asking, like what the heck is artificial intelligence? Can AI be ethical? Can we ethically scale our support systems with this technology? Can we improve access to information while keeping community voices at the center? What does it mean to preserve human dignity in the age of AI? These are some of the questions we'll be exploring over the next few days. But first, I have a question for you. What character strengths are you bringing to this moment of uncertainty? How are you leading with character? To answer this question, all you need to do is look around the room and see what motivates those in the helping profession to rise to the collective challenges before us. When I look around this room of helpers, I see highly curious people, intellectually engaged professionals who lean into questions, refine their understanding, and apply insight in meaningful ways. Having spent your careers helping others, it is your nature to be patient. You see changing landscapes as an opportunity to steady your gait, to make deliberate, measured movements, grounding yourself and those around you. You are persistent. You meet difficulty with determination. Even when the path is unclear, you know the true north, and you persist. Your steadfast determination fuels long-term progress because you know how to cope. This reminds me of the clinical definition of stress. Stress is the perception of a threat coupled with the belief that one is not capable of coping. Let's unpack that for a moment. Most people focus on that first part of the definition, fixating on the perception of a threat. Yet others in the same circumstance give greater weight to the second part by asking, do I have the capability to cope with this right now? By the very nature of being a helper, you know the answer is yes. You are highly capable people. You are mentally flexible. You weigh various points of view. You are intellectually honest, reflective, and humble. This is what makes you adaptive leaders. Your ability to lead with character inspires others to do the same. and together you traverse steep terrains you never thought you'd be capable of coping with. So let's celebrate the remarkable character strengths that you bring to this work. You do not simply react to change, you respond with character. You meet ambiguity with clarity, resolve, and purpose. And in doing so, you enter what psychologists call the flow state. Now, the flow state should not be confused with the image of going with the flow. That's cool too. We are not water simply drifting downstream. Instead, think of a camera aperture, how it narrows its lens to focus intently on a single subject. In the same way, flow is about deep concentration. It is about finding purpose in challenge. In those moments, we can lean into the challenge and become fully immersed in a single activity. We can look up at the clock and realize that hours have gone by. Kind of like this speech. There's something really interesting when we are in that space. It's almost as if time changes, that power weakens. We spend our days not clutching the hourglass, meticulously counting falling grains of sand. Helpers live not to count the minutes, but to make moments. Psychologists tell us that when people describe the most fulfilling seasons of their lives, when they were flourishing the most, they don't talk about the easy times. They talk about rising to challenges. They talk about the moments when they were in the zone, in a flow state, experiencing a deep sense of purpose. I believe that these ambiguities we face today are flow invitations. They are opportunities for us to enter into that state of focus and elevate our character strengths and to rise to the full potential of this moment. And there are no better models of this than the esteemed leaders of this conference. So I ask you, if you were a part of making this conference possible, please stand. Meg, Hans, Milo, Miliad, Christy and Christy, Sarah, Emmy, please stand. Julie, stand. It's another icebreaker. Yeah. Jason, Chris, Campion, Sudos, thank you so much for making this possible. We love icebreakers. Thank you for remaining curious, patient, and persistent in the midst of uncertainty. Thank you for modeling mental flexibility and showing us the profound impact that adaptive leaders can have. We see how fully you are engaged in this work, fully immersed in a mission that matters, and please know that your leadership has not gone unnoticed and is no way taken for granted. Thank you. Now, today we're going to be exploring a series of ideas together that start with identifying the problem and the plan. We'll explore ideas that inspire a movement, starting with the examination of the KSAM method, a framework for AI literacy, and then reflect on how to transition from a state of moral distance with AI to a practice of moral imagination. From there, we'll engage in a solutions scholarship approach, applying humanitarian and vulnerability lenses, and map ethical considerations across various societal sectors. We'll consider how to sustain ethical decision-making throughout the AI lifecycle and ensure that technology is not only smart, but also wise in its design and use. Finally, we will apply these plans and frameworks and strategies to the case studies that you will receive soon. So with that said, we'll go into the breakout sessions after this so that you can take what we're exploring and apply it to 3 different cases. And in doing so, we manifest this vision that was cast by world religion scholar Houston Smith, who said, "The century's technological advances must be matched by comparable advances in human relations. So what does it mean to be literate about AI? I developed this KSAM method to answer that question. KSAM stands for the ability to demonstrate knowledge, skills, attitudes, and motivations related to the ethical use of artificial intelligence. Now, I draw upon Bloom's and other frameworks on knowledge, skills, and attitudes, but I change it in a way to meet this moment. When I say knowledge, I'm referring to the literacy required to develop a working vocabulary, a conceptual fluency about how AI systems work. It is the knowledge of how they're developed and deployed, and how they shape and are being shaped by humans. This includes understanding basic technical and ethical terms, familiarity with the AI lifecycle, which we'll talk about later, ethical frameworks, as well as relevant laws. Now, there are some skills that everyone will need when it comes to AI literacy, and others are discipline-specific. For instance, everyone should be able to think critically and ethically deliberate about AI policies, and demonstrate information literacy to be able to detect misinformation and to verify sources. There are also the skills of engaging in respectful civil discourse. Imagine that skill today. Wouldn't that be lovely? Modeling evidence-based dialogue that acknowledges diverse perspectives, critical inquiry, ethical deliberation, information literacy, and civic dialogue. These are foundational skills that we can all apply. Then there are skills that require deeper training, like data and statistical literacy, analyzing data sets used to train models, to identify sampling biases, and interpret metrics related to fairness, accuracy, and impact. Or the skill of prompt engineering, breaking down problems into structured components, engaging effectively with generative AI tools, and interpreting AI-generated outputs critically and contextually. Each societal sector, profession, and academic discipline will need to define the specific AI-related skills that are relevant to their context. And then there's attitude. As AI-literate individuals, we embody the virtues of openness, the attitude of curiosity, the attitude of intellectual humility. We approach complex technologies with a willingness to learn and to question. We cultivate empathy for those affected by AI systems, particularly individuals from marginalized and underrepresented communities. And we recognize that understanding an AI system does not require uncritical acceptance. We remain reflective about our own standpoints and biases. Now, this is where the KSAM method stands apart from other literacy frameworks, whether for cultural literacy or religious literacy or other definitions of AI literacy. The distinctive contribution of this framework is the emphasis of motivations. Let me be clear. AI literacy is an ethical pursuit. We reject the misuse of AI knowledge to cause harm, whether that harm is intentional or unintentional. As AI literate professionals, we commit to the practice of nonmaleficence, the promise to do no harm, and beneficence, the promise to do good. We take shared responsibility for shaping AI in ways that uphold human dignity, advance constitutional principles, and protect the inalienable rights of all people. So let me explain why M in the KSAM method is so important. In my work on religious literacy, I have seen how some individuals, some groups, particularly religious minorities, have been treated as inherently suspicious in different contexts all around the globe and throughout human history. There were people who approached these communities with great interest by acquiring knowledge about their practices, about their history, about their culture, about their food, about the way they live their lives. They apply advanced research skills on religious studies, on historical studies, understanding how people engage in this work and how their beliefs and behaviors and acts of belonging intersect with one another. And yet, they demonstrated a surface-level openness because they were motivated by something that was actually unethical. They studied those groups to survey them, to portray them as threats, to justify denying them equal protection under the law. And in such cases, knowledge, skills, and even attitude of curiosity were insufficient. Without a grounding in ethical motivation, the pursuit of literacy can become distorted. The same is true with AI literacy. Many approach AI with an impressive amount of knowledge and skills and all kinds of incredible attributes of openness and curiosity. But if they lack the motivation to prevent harm and promote good, their literacy is ethically hollow. It lacks a compass, a true north. So I want to reiterate, AI literacy is an ethical pursuit. It is not a transactional exercise like prepping for the SAT exam, which I got horrible SAT scores, by the way. It cannot be measured only by what you know or whether you mastered a particular skill. AI literacy must be measured by the purpose that we bring to the work. And at its core, it calls us to live by the ethics of nonmaleficence and beneficence, not merely as legal requirements, not only as professional standards, but as guiding commitments. So what problem is AI literacy trying to solve? One key problem is that AI literacy seeks to address the risk of moral distance, a form of separation, whether psychological distance, physical or procedural distance, between those who design and make AI-driven decisions and those directly affected by them. My concern is that moral distance often numbs our empathy and erodes accountability. When decision makers are removed from the lived experiences of those impacted by AI systems, particularly those displaced, they may overlook individual needs and real-world consequences of those choices. When there is moral distance between the tools we use and the outcomes those tools produce, we drift further from taking shared responsibility for the innovations we rely on. That makes it harder to answer crucial questions like, what harm occurred? How can this be prevented? Who is responsible? One way to close this gap is to engage in moral imagination, a practice I explore in my book, Cultivating Empathy, which has a huge following, according to my publisher, in Minden, Nevada, where my mother lives. Cultivating empathy is an everyday skill. Moral imagination is the ability to picture yourself in a moral dilemma and see everyone's point of view. It is a civic virtue you embody when you extend empathy to someone with whom you disagree. You model what it means to understand another, recognizing that understanding need not imply agreement. But applying your moral imagination, you help close the moral distance created by technology that lies before you and another human being. You begin to see each actor at every stage of the AI lifecycle as a part of the interdependent web of existence of which we all belong. And in doing so, your practice of moral imagination leads to a deeper understanding of empathy, making you better poised to disrupt the scripts that magnify our divisions. This is why we take a solutions scholarship approach to studying AI ethics. I developed this research methodology to ground our work at the AI Ethics Lab at Rutgers University. The goal is to identify, curate, and implement actionable strategies to address ethical and legal challenges posed by AI. This approach asserts that ethical AI research must not only interrogate or critique AI systems, but also commit to identifying at least 3 potential solutions for every one problem analyzed. Embodying solutions-focused inquiry at every stage of the AI lifecycle can start a revolution. Solutions scholarship is inspired by 2 schools of thoughts. 1, positive psychology, and 2, solutions journalism. Positive psychology shifts the focus from past traumas to present strengths, empowering individuals to develop their character virtues, optimize everyday function, and contribute to the study of human flourishing. Solutions journalism, similarly, encourages news organizations to go beyond merely reporting on social problems to investigating who and what and how people are working to strengthen social systems and promote constructive change. Drawing upon these perspectives, solutions scholarship reframes AI ethics, not merely emphasizing risks and failures, but also showcasing innovations and frameworks that can prevent them. It's in this context, consider these guiding questions. What would it look like? What would it actually feel like to be a part of this shift in the narration from a predominantly critical discourse about AI to a balanced, generative, constructive, and empowering conversation? What outcomes might emerge if we not only proclaim what we are against, but also clearly articulate what we are striving toward? How might we craft multifaceted agendas that help educate the public about AI with a focus on wrestling with the moral issues of our time? We pursue these objectives by taking these 4 steps. 1, interrogate. We must critically analyze, measure, and assess the harms and risks AI poses or could pose. Many in the field of AI ethics actually stop at this first stage. They see themselves primarily as the interrogators. In contrast, our lab sees the work as a foundation for imagining something larger than our fears. Step 2, generate. We explore helpful interventions, practices that mitigate those harms through intellectually honest, creative, and generative inquiry. This is an incredibly rewarding activity that often puts our research team into that state of flow. We leave feeling elevated and energized rather than depleted by critique alone. 3, evaluate. We design research protocols to assess the effectiveness and limitations of proposed solutions, emphasizing their practical impact on ethical practices, legal frameworks, and policy development. And step 4, innovate. We focus our work and inspire to shape the broader field by experimenting with and investing in solutions that inspire optimism and drive innovation, drawing upon our collective wisdom. For example, one of our research projects is to publish the AI and Human Rights Index, which is very much relevant to the work that we're doing today. We have assembled a global research team to map 8 decades of human rights law to ask ourselves a series of questions that inform our proposal to create a convention on AI and human rights. This incredible team of 150 people from all around the world have been working on this for the last year, and I love seeing how there are both Western and non-Western approaches to this work. We really come alive when seeing AI through this humanitarian lens, in which we ask, which specific human rights are most at risk, and which ones could AI benefit? What cultural contexts and regional approaches to human rights are used to interpret these risks? What ethics and guiding principles can help create responsible AI? How do these principles interact with laws and professional codes of practice across industries and societal sectors? What international laws and frameworks can be used to assess AI's impact on human rights at every stage of its life cycle, from development to deployment to monitoring? Which sectors or society across all cultures are responsible for ensuring that AI systems protect and promote human rights? What legal, technical, and ethical terms are essential for engaging in this interdisciplinary work? And in answering these questions, our collective work emphasizes harm prevention and articulates measurably good outcomes. Non-maleficence and beneficence are two of the foundation ethics that we use to evaluate these systems that will inform our dialogue over this confluence. But they are not the only ones. We draw upon principles such as accountability, ensuring that those who create and deploy AI systems take responsibility for their impacts. Informed consent, so that people can understand when and how AI is affecting them. Human dignity, which reminds us that every AI decision should uphold the inherent worth and dignity of every person without exception. We value explainability, ensuring that decisions made by AI can be understood and questioned. We emphasize fairness to guard against discrimination and promote equitable outcomes. And we uphold the commitment to freedom and human agency, ensuring that individuals have meaningful control over the choices that affect their lives. We consider the importance of notice and predictability, privacy protection, and reproducibility, that is, the ability to audit and verify how AI systems work and what results they generate. When safety and security systems fail, and they sometimes will, we must ensure that people have access to remedies. We stand in solidarity with vulnerable populations, and we remain committed to developing AI systems that are not only high-performing, but also sustainable and transparent, trustworthy and verifiable. AI systems that reflect and respect the values of the people who are most impacted by them. It's in this context we take a vulnerability lens, specifically in this confluence, focusing on the fundamental rights of refugees. Those who are seeking asylum, those displaced, the newcomers, have these intersecting identities. They are often children, women, ethnic and racial minorities, indigenous people, religious minorities, people with disabilities, people experiencing poverty, older persons, LGBT people, migrant workers. These intersectionality of these vulnerabilities call us to ask which sectors are accountable to protect the most vulnerable among us. How is it that arts and culture and business and media communication can help protect the most vulnerable by taking responsibility for the skills that they need, for the knowledge they need, and the motivations they have to do good and to prevent harm? How might defense and military, education and research elevate the environment and energy sectors? How can we leverage each of these sectors to say we need all hands on deck? Everybody around the world with in all of these disciplines and sectors are required to address the moral issues of our time. We need all voices at the table. And so it's in this context we are a part of a global movement. You often hear it called responsible AI, AI for good, ethical AI. And all of these movements point to the same outcome, that AI systems uphold human values and promote public good. But how do we actually get there? We get there through making sustained ethical decision-making. That means ensuring that ethics considerations are not just one-time checkboxes or post hoc reviews. Rather, they must be continuously and persistently embedded at every stage of the AI lifecycle by making every stakeholder and bringing them involved at every sector. This is not a passive process. It requires the active integration of principles, morals and values, safety and security protocols, legal obligations and human rights standards, and objective, fair, and rigorous audit mechanisms. This ethical integration must be sustained through the entire AI lifecycle, including in the design, the investment, in the development, deployment, use, maintenance, and monitoring of AI systems. As you can see, sustained ethical decision-making requires us to consider everyone effective, not just the users of AI systems, but non-users as well. It demands special attention to the needs and the rights of vulnerable populations, as well as the long-term impact on the environment. Only when we embed ethics into every phase and decision point in the AI lifecycle are we able to intentionally and persistently do the work that we call responsible AI. And so it's in this context that we have to look at this AI lifecycle and realize that we can embed accuracy, trustworthy systems, and ensure that various stakeholders are ensuring that at the development and the deployment stage, we can achieve something that none of us can achieve alone. But the real question before us is, to what end are these technological advances? Now, many AI ethicists and technologies begin their work with the premise that the ultimate goal is to evaluate and advance smart technology. I do not believe that is our ultimate goal. And let me explain why asking what makes smart technology smart so important to the work that you do every day. Smart technologies are autonomous or semi-autonomous devices or networking systems, and they leverage sensors and AI and machine learning and real-time connectivity to enhance the Internet of Things, from personal devices and homes and transportation and healthcare, industry and agriculture. These systems are designed to collect and store and process and analyze and learn from user-generated data. And in each of these stages, there is a very clear and measurable way to understand the transactional nature of technology. Can this tool do this task for me? Can it do it faster, cheaper, better? Task delegation becomes the measuring stick for success if smart technology is our final objective, as if efficiency alone were the highest aims of technological progress. But I believe that there is a wider vision, a deeper purpose for us all, for the helpers to cast at these uncertain times. Smart may be efficient, but wise is principled. And in the face of uncertainty, complexity, and inequality, our task is not just to ask whether AI can do something, but whether it should, and in what conditions, and with whose values, and to what end. Now, let's take a step back and ask ourselves, what makes a human wise? What is wisdom, and can it actually be taught? And if so, can it be applied to this technological revolution? If so, how? Let's unpack the words of Robert Sternberg, who defines the balanced theory of wisdom as one's use of intelligence, creativity, common sense, and knowledge, as mediated by positive ethical values toward the achievement of a common good, through a balance among intrapersonal, interpersonal, and extrapersonal interests over the short and long terms, to achieve a balance among adaptation to existing environments. to shaping existing environments and the selection of new environments. And so it's in this context we can ask ourselves, what makes wise technology wise? Let's apply this framework to AI. Wise technology intentionally applies technology through sustained ethical decision-making by stakeholders who infuse their unique human insights by integrating human intelligence, creativity, common sense, and knowledge. They're consistently mediating technology use with positive ethical values. They're carefully balancing intrapersonal, individual, community, and environmental interests. They're evaluating short and long-term impacts to achieve balance among skillful adaptation, conscientious shaping of existing environments, thoughtful selection and creation of new environments and social developments, in order to ensure that the technological advances that we seek will prevent harm and actively maximize good for all, while advancing the ethics of justice and equity and fairness, preserving every person's inalienable rights, specifically dignity and privacy, strengthening the community's social and economic and ecological resilience, and cultivating transparent, engaged, and informed civic participation, thereby fostering collective livability, well-being, and prosperity, enabling humans to flourish across generations. So with that said, I want to ask this brief question to start a conversation with you. What about these approaches may be of value to you in your work? What is it about the KSAM method of both emphasizing knowledge, skills, attitudes, as well as motivation in your AI literacy work? How can we move from this shift from moral distance to moral imagination by situating ourselves in this global moral dilemma and seeing multiple points of view? How can we maintain our commitments, identify problems, but in doing so with a solutions mindset, the use of humanitarian and vulnerability lenses when mapping AI ethics? What is it about this pursuit of calling for sector-specific responsibilities to engage in this ethical decision-making, ensuring that AI is not only smart, but is also wise in its design and use? So having laid out these frameworks, I open up this part of our presentation to a Q&A. What thoughts, questions do you have? What's springing up for you? And what we'll do is we'll take 3 thoughts and questions, and then I'll respond, and we'll see how much time we have for additional. So if you have questions, please raise your hand and we'll bring a mic to you.
I was curious, what's your thoughts on regulation of AI?
One principle I learned in doing First Amendment law is that the best laws come from those in a self-governing process. So if the people who are most impacted by the work are at the table to determine the regulations, it will not only become a good law, it will become a respected law, and in turn be implemented. But when regulations are forced, when they are pushed, and there is a kind of resistance, you can see an undermining of the rule of law in ways that can be counterproductive to the regulations themselves. So we have to recognize that regulation is a symbol of a process. It's a symbol of a process to get it buy-in from multiple stakeholders so that we can agree on how to move forward together. That's my philosophy of regulation. And while the mic is being passed, we're going to hand out some handouts. And each of you, we'll give you a mic in a second. Each of you will have one of 3 case studies. You will either have a handout about Maria, Sarah, or Ahmed, and then we're going to do a breakout session where you're going to explore how to apply these frameworks to these case studies. Okay, sorry, your question.
Hi. As you started out, right, moral dilemma is the separation between those that are making decisions and those that are affected by them. Is there space in the moral imagination for co-design or user research, and how would you recommend kind of implementing that in the AI space?
Yeah. So if moral imagination is this invitation for us to go from the audience onto the stage and see all of the actors in the moral dilemma and in this role play understand their points of view. If that's the process of moral imagination, then how might we involve the communities that we serve in understanding their stories so deeply that their wisdom is embedded in the very regulations, procedures, technologies that impact them the most? Take, for instance, AI and language translation. It can be very frustrating for someone who says, that is not my version of how I would say that word, or it feels really crude and rude to have me talk to a bot when I am just been displaced and no one's hearing my story, right? So how can we include them in the process to have their stories, to have their insights, help co-create the solutions that they are seeking? And in this way, it's not a top-down process, it's an organic one built upon the wisdom of the community as a whole. Is that a helpful response? Great.
Okay, so we have a question from the internet. So how
The
might
internet.
someone overcome an inherent distrust of AI?
Oh my God, please tell me the answer. I feel like it's true. AI has bred a lot of fears. What happens to one's body when we are in a fearful state? We have these chemical reactions where our amygdala gets us in this fight or flight mode. So if AI is a potential threat and we act from a state of fear, our judgment might be diminished. And that's why I believe it's really important to take a solutions approach to this work, because it actually changes our disposition. We don't just come in to raise our fist and scream into the wind. We don't just come into this work to point fingers and to shed the spotlight on our deepest fears. By being solutions-oriented leaders, we adapt to these modes, and just like a good parent would be to help a child manage their fears of the unknown, help see that they have a moral compass to help guide them through uncertainty. And so I hope we can help tone down the anxiety and fear around this and lean into the collective wisdom that we can already draw upon, like 8 decades of human rights law, and say we can actually integrate this into how we understand and regulate AI. In this way, I'm actually hopeful. I used to be quite fearful. I used to be like, oh my Lord. But now actually seeing how it works and actually doing expert AI training at OpenAI, for instance, and seeing how you can actually have some real and incredible technical solutions to huge, like, amorphous problems. And in that, I feel like we can do something. We can roll up our sleeves and make a change. Yes.
Yeah, so, you can hear me? Oh, sorry. So what happens when the people with the capital that are building out the AI, their values don't align with solution scholarship, or there's such a misalignment of value systems? Like, yes, we can have empathy and we can understand, but there's such a misalignment of values. Or they take the approach of, they want to be efficient first and then we'll work on balance later.
Right. We can turn to social networking technology to help answer this question. Content regulation of social networks was usually a top-down approach. Okay, this committee developed these 15 rubric items to determine whether or not the algorithms would flag my post if it were violent or promoting disinformation or engaged in something unlawful, right? And those are good things. Those are kind of the floor of the legal aspects of how we are in digital spaces. But what have we seen as a result of that practice? If you have company A, I was about to say XYZ, but I think company X is already taken, that has a certain practice. They have an ethics department, they have a content regulation mechanism, they have a way for users to flag what is and what isn't regulated in that space. And it is in that process that we might see a new owner come in and say, we're going to have a different set of values. We're going to shut down that ethics department. We're not going to have these sets of tools. We're going to introduce something else. So if the global community is basically at the whim of the ethics of the newest owner of the biggest tech companies, then we are, as a people, as humanity, basically delegating our ethics, our responsibility of determining what is responsible tech to those who own the products themselves. But here is where AI can completely shift this moment, and I am incredibly excited by this opportunity. Artificial intelligence can do something that no other tech did, which is personalize things to you, and to you, and to you. And so what would it look like if you had an AI assistant that was actually your ethics coach and your guide and could say, hey, Nate, okay, I know you have 3 learning disabilities. I know you're about to send that email, but are you sure you want to, before you hit send, want to send that because the spell check didn't identify that you just started your email with hello, professor, but forgot the O in hello. Hello, professor. All of a sudden, my AI assistant can help me live out my values. It might say, hey, Nate, do you want to share that, or do you want me to do a misinformation check? Hey, Nate, when you were engaging in this technology, we noticed that from your biometric ring that your stress level went up. Do you want to take a break? All of a sudden, we can actually be a part of a movement to personalize our digital spaces. And in doing so, I might go to your mosaic of tiles that you built with your, let's say, call it a project insight, and your insight tiles were coming together to build your ethical framework for how you want to live online. So if you do not engage in drinking alcohol for religious purposes, for instance, when you are engaging in searches, that doesn't show up because your assistant is guiding you and helping you live out your ethics and values in digital spaces. And I might say, I would really like to incorporate those in my life as well. And we swap. And all of a sudden, we create a global repository of these ethical tiles to then say, hello, company A, B, C, X, Y, Z. Look at people vote with their feet. they're saying they don't want to be a part of these types of echo chambers. They don't want to be a part of these parts of things. You alone cannot determine the ethics for our digital spaces because AI is personalizing it for all of us, and we collectively are telling these companies what our values are and who we want to be in this new season. That's a thought experiment that we can continue to have. We'll take this one more question, and then we'll have two more questions.
I'm going to keep it very short and direct and follow up to the subject of fear. Can AI read our minds?
Can AI read our minds?
So I'm asking this because I think this may have happened to all of us. Sometimes we are searching for something, let's say in Facebook, and you'll all of a sudden see the ads. But sometimes this has happened to me. I have not searched it. I have not spoken about it. And I have just thought about it. And I can see the ads coming. And this is the fear that you mentioned. That I think, is it reading my mind? Like, I have not spoken to anyone about it.
I'm going to answer your question in an indirect way. So I've been on this, I've been on the board of a polling group for the last 7 years. And what political scientists can tell you is that if they know what toothpaste you bought, which brand, which news source you use the most, and whether or not you like Billie Eilish or Taylor Swift, they can tell you who you voted for. Not because pollsters can read your mind, but because the math shows that there's a statistical likelihood that you lean in this direction because of the ecosystems, echo chambers that we're already in. So yes, so if you're using Siri, if you're using Alexa, if you are using Google Search, if you're using Google Maps, if you are using Netflix streaming, if you're, these algorithms have an incredible amount of data on us, and that makes vulnerable populations even more vulnerable. So, can it read your mind? I don't think so. But can it predict your behavior given everything it knows? Yes. And a final question.
Hi. So how can we ensure that the development and deployment of AI tools don't further damage the ecosystem?
Like environment?
Mm-hmm.
Environmental concerns are at the heart of this entire enterprise of not only AI development, but this somewhat kind of technical colonization era that you can see, where there's a sort of this dominant view of we need to do this for all of humanity, therefore at any cost we're going to engage in this. I think we have this incredible opportunity to actually use AI to come up with new innovations on how to ensure there is water, to ensure that there is ecological sustainability, that there are resources that are distributed. So it becomes this really interesting circumstance that the very product itself could be causing harm, and yet the technology promises that it will help solve the harm it causes. So it is a game that we must play very, very deliberately. I think that the weighing of those cost-benefit analysis will lead all of us to ask ourselves, are we doing this for us now or for generations to come? Unfortunately, in our individualistic me society, we tend to think very short term. That's what smart technology does. Wise technology puts long-term impact, environmental sustainability, multi-generational flourishing at the heart of the pursuit. So I think by using a wise approach, we can actually solve the ethical and environmental concerns that you're mentioning. Now, we're going to play a game. There are 3 characters that are before you. And it's 10:30 now, so I think we're good. We have like 45 minutes or so. So there are 3 characters before you that are coming from the Switchboard's AI evaluation tool. Now, this tool helps leaders and staff in resettlement organizations assess their readiness for using AI ethically and effectively. If you haven't read this already, I highly encourage you to download this material. It's so sophisticated. It is incredibly nuanced, well-sourced, and deeply ethical, strategic, and I think it really is a gold standard for how we can move from going from smart to wise technology. So for all of you who are involved in like writing this, I bow to you. I'm so grateful for your leadership. In this work, you're going to see 3 case studies. One of Maria, who is a service provider. And then there's Ahmad, who is a ethnic community-based organizer and a volunteer, and Sarah, who is a strategic leader. And what I'd like for you to do in groups of 3, go ahead and take a look at some of the characteristics of each character. So let's take Maria, for instance. She's a resettlement caseworker. How many of you have Maria as your case study today? Raise your hand. Okay, so look around you. You're going to kind of form little groups in a minute. Now, Maria is a resettlement caseworker who brings a grounded level of perspective to AI implementation. She focuses on practical applications of AI to streamline client services and maintain the human touch essential to resettlement work. What you're going to see in her case study is that she's using AI tools to match client resumes and their interests with relevant programs. She's identifying privacy risks, such as sharing full names and addresses and phone numbers. And she's provided clients with training and privacy practices. She's obtained informed consent before applying AI tools to client data. So for those of you who have Maria as your case study, you'll see that on the back page, there are 9 ways in which we are applying the smart to wise methodology to her circumstance. Number 1, is she engaging in sustained ethical decision making with diverse stakeholders? Number 2, is she integrating human intelligence, creativity, and common sense knowledge? And number 3, and so on. The middle column provides some evidence of Maria's practice. And in this case study, you see her self-evaluation. This last column is her reflections saying, yeah, I think I was strong in this regard. I'm engaging multi-stakeholder inputs and I'm embedding accountability from this. And then she goes through each one and gives a self-assessment of her work as if this is her personnel review. She gets a gold star, by the way. Now, what I'd like for you to evaluate is Maria right in her self-evaluation? Are there things you would maybe do differently? What would you see change? Now, let's take, for instance, Ahmed. So he's a volunteer in an ethnic community-based organization, and he's advocating for AI-powered tools to enhance accessibility for clients with disabilities. He himself has a visual impairment, and he believes that AI can be a bridge to independence and inclusion. He's seeking to promote culturally responsive, multilingual disability awareness with AI applications. And so he's doing some really interesting things, like demonstrating how an AI-powered chatbot through interviews could actually increase the level of sophistication when it comes to preferred language and recommendations to personalize assistive devices. He's looking at focusing on screen adapters for visual impairments, captioning tools for hearing impairments, and providing clients with AI-powered text-to-speech and message sharing tools, and so on. And like Maria, You can see that the smart to wise method is in the first column. You'll see evidence of his practices, and then his self-evaluation, where he's saying, okay, I realize this was a good short-term solution, but I want to practice something long-term to address the ethical and environmental concerns that we've been discussing. Then there's Sarah. Sarah is an executive director of Hope Refugee Services. She leads AI adaptation to ensure sustainability and scalable impact. She prioritizes infrastructure readiness, ethical standards, and effective service delivery. And so it's in this context she's aligning AI proposals with the organizational's goals, its values around case management, security, and efficiency. She's addressing benefits and risks. She's identifying key use cases like translation and chatbots and data management. And she's partnering with both IT and subject matter research experts to evaluate the technical feasibility. Take a look at her evaluation. Who is working on Sarah in this workshop? Okay, you'll focus on her. And raise your hand if you are Ahmed. Excellent. So please take a moment to break into your groups, talk through your case study, and ask yourself this simple question. Did they get their self-evaluation right? Meaning, did they help move their technological adoption from a smart technology approach to wise technology? And what we'll do after is then report back on any of the insights that you found with this exercise, and then we'll close out with some closing remarks. Okay, enjoy. Yes? Groups of about three. That would be excellent.
You can even get with a group of people right next to you, because you guys should have 3 in a row that have the same case study.
Great.
And you know,
So we'll gather as a larger group in 5 minutes. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back, welcome back. Okay, we are we're coming back as a group to report. And in this time, we're going to look at the 3 case studies for you to report back to the larger group about the insights that you have about applying the smart technology to the wise technology framework. So we had during the break, we had a few discussion questions that came from the online audience. Sure. So during your discussions, we had some really interesting questions come up from the online participants. They were very easy questions, like, can artists protect their rights and work from intellectual property violations? And how can we retain our critical thinking skills in this time? And are we overly relying for AI for moral reasoning? So these are incredible questions that I will dedicate the next 4 books that I write to them. Let me say for the artists, a simple way to protect your rights is to make it known that you are the owner and that you do not you make publicly available your exact statements on how your work can or cannot be used. So Wicked Commons is an excellent way in order to enforce that work. Other artists, like you'll know, like the artists who made like the Love Park sign, the LOVE in Philadelphia, he made his work publicly accessible and wanted it to be shared as a part of the expression itself. So artists can take self-determination on this. On the question of over-reliance for AI for moral reasoning, we just have to remember AI is an algorithm. It's math. So yes, we can use math to do all kinds of really interesting things, like nuclear energy as another source of energy, and yet it can also be used for bombing. So the moral reasoning always relies with us, never with the algorithm. As far as critical thinking skills, for those of us who teach in higher education, the primary objective when teaching in this age of AI is to recognize that the primary goal of education is to cultivate a person's intellectual self-worth. So when they leave that classroom, when they leave that grade, when they graduate with that degree, they feel more comfortable and confident. If we end up using AI to defer our own judgment and our own voice to an algorithm, then as a humanity we are lost. I don't think that will happen because human agency is a very powerful motivating force. They want to be known and be known. There could be charades where people may not feel comfortable or confident and therefore are using AI in order to mask something underlying that motivation, but that goes to the M of KSAM. What is motivating my use of this technology in the classroom, for instance? So I think by remembering why we do the work will help us get us there. So thank you for the online participants for those thoughtful questions. And now we'll turn to the group. Raise your hand if you were working on Maria's case study. I'm really curious, are there any headlines, insights that you had when analyzing her case? What ways can she be more thoughtful in ensuring that technology is moving from smart to wise approaches? Anyone want to report back from their group? There's no pressure to do so. What I'm noticing about Maria, and feel free to jump in if anyone has thoughts.
Yeah, we had a brief discussion about. We thought she did a great job. We had a brief discussion about maybe incorporating an ethical way for the relationship and the conversation between her and potential clients to also include folks who are directly impacted by the work. So instead of just taking the assumption directly from the client itself, maybe incorporating more people who are further downstream into the initial assessment of building the framework.
Sounds great. Yeah, really, really crowdsource the community's wisdom on those topics. If she does draw upon the lived experiences of not just her staff, but the community, like you said, if she adds like bias stress tests at each module to update and keep those values aligned, I think she can progress in these really interesting ways. She can track vendor sustainability pledges. She can build 3-year learning agendas, document edge case failures, integrate a vulnerability lens, and even a green AI guide in order to help people make decisions, and publish a client-facing, even frequently asked questions in multiple languages to invite that feedback loop. So these are some of the interesting ways that Maria can engage in sustained ethical decision making. What are your thoughts about Ahmed? Anyone want to report back on what your group thought about his work with AI? My sense is that if we are to involve, like he does, people with multiple disabilities, whether that's motor or cognitive, in the co-design, then we can find some really incredible ways for AI to personalize things that wouldn't have otherwise been possible without this technology. It's also possible that he could publish this open issue log about the bias mitigation. So he's actually giving data, like real clear perspectives to the data scientists to actually tweak and fine-tune the work. So in this way, these volunteers, these agents can be a part of a larger human data team to ensure that the algorithms aren't just based on bad data sets, but they are actually infusing more and more good information to ensure that there will, be a green tech criteria for the work, that there can be a carbon footprint tool. There could be a way to measure the 2-year, the 5-year, the 10-year roadmap, to document edge cases, and to embrace that vulnerability lens and look at different ways to use multi-language accessible material. And in this way, Sarah is also doing some interesting things. Anyone have any thoughts about Sarah's case study that you want to report back?
Well, we noticed that she didn't include clients in her, so that was a big missing piece. And actually, can I, since I have the mic, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
When you talk about vulnerabilities and making sure that AI is addressing vulnerabilities, are you also talking about preparing people to not believe everything AI says? Mm-hmm. You know, there's been some interesting cases of people falling in love with their AI, or people, saying that the AI told them to do it or whatever. Are we, for the most vulnerable cases, and Milad and I were talking about this, is very ripe for cult behavior at some point as well, right? What are we doing to make sure that people who interact with AI are aware of that as well? Is that part of the vulnerability?
Yeah, so the UN vulnerability lens, this commitment to ensure that the most vulnerable among us are protected. We've talked about the list, right? Women, children, refugees, older people, LGBT people, and so on. If we start with the populations who are most vulnerable as a guiding point, then we can add in your very sophisticated question, which is, what makes them vulnerable? What makes a child susceptible to these vulnerabilities that others may not be? So for instance, there's a lawsuit right now regarding a child's use of character AI, in which there's this alleged thing that the child's use of this was a factor in the child's suicide. And so this is a live legal question right now on who is responsible. But we will see how that case settles, and it'll be very interesting. But the bigger question is, how did we get to that point? How do we get to the point where knowing that there are vulnerable populations like children could use certain things in ways that could have that effect. And so what I deeply am trying to advocate, as you can hear through all of this work, is that it's not only about the insight that we can bring to it, but the foresight. We have to be able to foresee these things. When it comes to trust, no, don't trust AI. It's because it is a tool. Just like spell check might say, hey, yes, go ahead and send hello professor, but not catch me missing the O, it can get it wrong. And so we should not defer our agency or our judgment or our morality to math. We should use math to elevate, to give us more data so that it's not a directive, but it's actually data that we can use to make sense of these vulnerabilities. I hope that's helpful. So what I also find interesting about Sarah and all of the workers is that how could you actually have a bias that might go under the radar? So for instance, if you're inputting a newcomer's new address or their former address, or you're looking at the case study on whether or not they should get these services as compared to these ones. The data sets show that if you are sorting by zip code, you're actually using it as a proxy for race, especially for highly segregated societies like ours. And so when you narrow in on zip code as the metric, you can get into a lot of economic, ethnic, and racial concerns that are embedded in the data, but you wouldn't otherwise see as an ethical problem. So this is why we need to have foresight and insight. We need to go deeper into the data to actually look at the implications and then tease out which biases might be hidden and which ones we can then elevate and eliminate. Now, with that said, I want to conclude by just thanking you. Thank you for being on this journey with me. I'm so grateful that we've had this opportunity to explore this KSAM method, where we're recognizing that it's not only about the knowledge we have, not only about the skills we have or the attitude we bring, but the core motivations that remind us that AI literacy is an ethical pursuit. That we're trying to bridge that gap, that the moral distance that occurs when technology is between one person and another. And in doing so, we engage the moral imagination, situate ourselves in these moral dilemmas, and see multiple points of view. We widen our circles of compassion by applying a humanitarian and vulnerability lens. We do the ethics mapping. We understand which sectors are responsible for this work and how to engage in ethical, sustained decision-making throughout the entire life cycle in order to move us from smart to wise technology. And in doing so, we collectively ensure that the century's technological advances will be matched by comparable advances in human relations. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nate. We have a break now for the next 20 to 25 minutes. We'll call everyone back here for our next session at 11:30.